Place operates 24/7, 365 days a year. We're manned 8 hours a day, and holidays and weekends is 3 hours. Someone's on call, the system still runs, but we have a pager system that if any alarms go off, the process gets out of control, we get paged and someone responds to take care of the issues. That was a big upgrade that happened in 1995 that we became basically automated. It's pretty neat. The plant dates, if you guys got a handout, I believe, I don't know if anybody had a chance to look at, dates way back into the 1800s. It was basically turned into what you see now around 1921, which is pretty neat. So it's an old building and it's still in pretty good shape. The last big upgrade we had was back in 1995. We're scheduled to do the second phase of an upgrade this coming year. It's going to be spread out, probably take us 2 years to complete it, but stuff that's getting old and decrepit, getting outdated, stuff that we need to update, and leaky roofs and stuff like that. We're going to put an addition on for a locker room for the guys. We don't have a locker room here or nothing, so a lot of stuff that's been a long time coming that will be nice to have. This is a conventional surface water treatment plant. If anybody ever hears terminology, a lot of people, like if they have city water, it might be wells or it might be a surface water treatment plant. It seems like most people around here are used to wells, but so whoever set this up way back in the 1800s that decided this would be a good place for a water treatment plant really did their engineering work. We're all gravity right off of the Mascoma River, which is pretty neat. So there's no pumping involved to get the water here, which is really nice. And the watershed that comes down the Mascoma River from Mascoma Lake and the surrounding areas is huge. It's like 192 square miles. I believe there's 5 major lakes that contribute to our watershed, which is important in drought situations that you've heard of in the last few years. We've been pretty fortunate that, although we've gotten down to low conditions, nothing scary where we've thought about putting any drought restrictions on or nothing. So that's kind of neat. So with a conventional surface water treatment plant, what we have to do is we take the water out of the river and we have to add a chemical to it, a coagulant, to form floc, coagulation, flocculation, and then we settle out the particles that are in the river, floating down the river when you see the river real dirty from rainstorms and stuff. After we settle out the water, it comes onto the filters here, where then it's filtered. And then it goes into some clear wells, and then it's pumped out of here. Before all that kind of happens, when we add the coagulant, we add a powdered activated carbon, and that's to take taste and odors out when we have algae blooms or organics from leaf drop in the fall. That's a big contributor to organics, and that's where powdered activated carbon. It's old technology, but it works really well. We also add sodium bicarbonate in the beginning. That helps the coagulation process. It also helps buffer the water by bringing the alkalinity up. After it's filtered and everything, we adjust the pH before it leaves, and that helps with the corrosion control strategy. We try to bring the pH from 7 up to 8, and that's to help balance the water so it's not as corrosive. You hear about the lead and copper rule and lead leaching. That's been our methodology, philosophy for corrosion control to meet the lead and copper rule of way back in 1990 since then. We're actually going to be changing in the upgrade. There's other testing we do. A lot of testing required by the EPA to meet regulations, and we're going to probably start adding a polyorthophosphate, which coats the pipes to help any corrosion issues and lead leaching and whatnot. But that's all part of the big upgrade that we're going to be going through here in the next 2 years. When the water leaves here, we have 3 big high lift pumps that pump here. The plant averages about 1.4 right now, 1.4 million gallons of water a day. We have 4 big water storage tanks in Lebanon, totaling 7.2 million gallons of storage. If you've been out hiking at all, you might have come across one somewhere in town up by DHMC Hospital. There's a big one up on the hill. There's another one up here off Prospect Hill, if anybody's ever seen that one. Across from the police station, there's some hiking trails, the Farnham Hill area. up there. That's one of our water tanks. We also have several pressure reducing zones. We try to loop the system so we can minimize downtime if someone's out of water. We can backfeed DHMC Hospital through the woods into the Sachem Village area and backfeed the system to West Lebanon that way, and down across the airport in the West Lebanon that way from that Poverty Hill tank. Kind of interesting. We have, I believe it's around 90 miles of water main in Lebanon, Jay. There's 849 hydrants, fire hydrants at last count that I knew of, about 3,400 metered connections in Lebanon, something like that. Today, yeah, tomorrow will be different. There's 4 guys that run the treatment plant, and there's 6 guys that take care of the distribution and sewer collection, water mains and sewer mains out and about to maintain the system that we have. Trying to think of some other facts. Another interesting fact that Lebanon Water Department has, it used to be the Lebanon Water Works, and there was an annual meeting, and way back when, some of the history I've looked at. Back in 1951, it was started to be discussed about fluoridation, and finally passed a vote after a lot of contentious arguments over the benefits and the pros and cons, because fluoride actually can be a dangerous chemical. But it was decided that it was the best that we fluoridate the water, and since 1956, I believe it is, Lebanon's fluoridated the water here. We follow very strict guidelines by the CDC and the state. We've won a few awards from the state for maintaining a quality level of fluoride in the system. That's kind of nice. But that's something we get asked quite a bit about fluoride. I believe there's 14 communities in the state that fluoridate the water. Fluoride's actually naturally occurring. There is some towns that have to do fluoride removal because they have too high a level of fluoride in the state. It's kind of interesting.
So when I came in, I saw all these old pictures on the wall over here.
Yeah.
Can we talk about those a little bit?
Sure. We can talk about
these,
some.
what I'm talking about here is, these are some pictures from like way back when that are over the filters here. One of those is like the 1890s, so it's pretty neat. It kind of shows that, like Scott was saying, the plant hasn't really changed, the footprint at least, very much at all. That's from way before any of our time. So it's kind of neat. Scott can kind of explain to you how we got to where we are now.
Yeah, so years ago, a lot of water plants, it was when you became the runner of the water system, you kind of had to live for it. And you kind of have to do, still to this day, but before there was cell phones and computers and all, a lot of times they would build, this is the building we're in right now, this building right here. And this house right here was the house for the water operator. And that used to sit up on the bank here. It's kind of neat. Due to handicap access, we took it down back in '95. But at one time, the operator kind of had to live right next to the plant. It was kind of neat. And that happens quite often. I know it happens, or it used to happen up in Hanover. Up north, used to see it a lot. Kind of interesting. This is our filters that you can see right here. This dates back to, I know it was at least 30 years ago because they weren't quite like that when I came here. This original picture, I'm not sure that when this was first started, it was actually started as a fire precinct. It was more just about being able to prevent fires. And I believe this, when we did some excavating out here in the parking lot, we hit some old wells. And I believe these are old well houses. So this is almost in the time frame before there was, it was really a treatment plant per se. This is a picture that we still can't justify to this day. It's kind of interesting. At one time, this plant supposedly generated its own electricity. And a lot of people think this is an old turbine. We've had some engineers say, no, we don't think that's what that is, but I still don't know what it is. We've never actually figured that out exactly. But that picture is facing right here. It's kind of neat to have some old history with the place. It's kind of neat. Anybody got any questions so far that I might be able to answer?
How many people use water from the town, and how many have their own wells?
So the daytime the resident population, I believe the last I knew that was on city water is around 13,500. But with all the industry in town, I know the daytime population's been estimated from 30 to 50,000 with all the industry visitors, especially with DHMC Hospital, Centera Parkway, Centera Park area, Etna Road industry, Airport Air Park, and the shopping on 12A. Yep. That might at one time use the water in Lebanon.
So how much time from the time you take it out of where it comes in to wherever
Yep.
it comes in to the time it goes, I guess, to those 4
Water tanks?
water tanks?
Yeah, so basically, we've done, based on flows from the river, we've done some dye testing before with the main lake and flows coming down the river, anywhere from 2 to 4 hours from the lake to get a drop of water here to the plant. And depending on the speed of which we run the plant, we can run slow or different speeds. Anywhere from 2 to 4 hours, we can push a drop of water through the plant and it's headed out of here. And then there's only some of the tanks, we don't pump the one tank in the tank, sometimes it spreads out and goes, but basically it's right here, so it's within minutes that the water's in the tank up at the top of the hill.
Interesting.
Yeah,
Fast.
it's good. Yeah, it's kind of
It doesn't look like
interesting.
it's moving so fast.
Right,
there,
right.
so, you know.
So these filters, it's kind of neat if anybody's seen, I was going to start the other way, but that's okay. These filters are almost like a fish tank that you might have at home, the little charcoal bubbler filter with the charcoal in it. Basically, these filters have 30 inches of media in the bottom of them. Them filters are about 8 feet deep at the bottom. There's a high-density sand, a regular, almost like a beach sand, and then there's anthracite coal that's very, very fine. And water comes on top of the filter, then it filters down through all that media. After so many hours of operation, the filter has to be backwashed, just like you had to clean your water and your filter in your fish tank. Each filter can approximately, depending on process control, we can process 1 million gallons of water through a filter before it needs to be backwashed. And depending on the speed at which we're running, that's 2 to 3 days each filter gets backwashed. We monitored turbidity, the amount of dirt that's sneaking through the filter, head loss, the differential, how dirty the filter's getting, hours of operation and gallons processed is the way we choose in which how a filter's going to wash.
So in the flocculation, where does that happen?
The flocculation, so the flocculation starts in the other building over there, and then the sedimentation, we're trying to force the flocculation, the particles to settle out, so the filters don't have to work so hard to remove the dirt. Yeah.
Will you recommend drink water from the sink?
Would I recommend drinking water from the sink? Absolutely. Yeah.
So one kind of interesting thing about this place is every single drop of water that comes out needs to be drinkable. So when you think about the actual amount of water that you put in a cup and drink, or your coffee in the morning, it might be less than 1% ever anywhere in the country. But every single drop that comes out of here is passed every single EPA test, every single thing that we're guided by. We either meet or exceeded at all times the last year. So if we would recommend definitely that it's okay to drink.
Yeah.
Some interesting things that happen out in the system before it gets to your tap. Scott kind of talked about what happens at the plant here and how it works its way through the system. When it actually gets to your house, we're responsible for it as it comes out of the tap in your cup. So whatever goes on in your internal plumbing, we're actually responsible for making sure the water doesn't react with it in some way that would negatively impact you. So basically it gets to your house and then we can't control the plumbing at all. So when we talk about going to a polyorthophosphate, that's really just another added level of protection for you guys. So any particles that would sneak through or build up on the pipe would then be coated by this stuff. And they would either settle out or they wouldn't end up staying in your bodies at all. So it really is an added health benefit. Another interesting thing, about 8 years ago now, we used to drive around in a truck, jump out and go in your houses, read your meters, and that's how we generate your water bill. And we did a huge changeover. Some of you are probably here. We do radio read meters now, so there's a little antenna on the side of your house that sends a signal to a truck as we drive by when we do radio reads. So instead of taking weeks and weeks for one guy to drive around and read thousands of meters, we drive through your neighborhood and they all get sent to our computer. So it's a lot different than it used to be. It saves a lot of time on some things. Of course, when Scott started, when he was much younger than he is now, there was only, 400 hydrants in the city.
Yeah, it's
Now
almost
there's
double.
quite a bit more, so
Right.
the burden on that crew is a lot higher, but we also find ways to be more efficient, like the metering, so.
Right.
The job's kinda shifted, like Scott said, but it's even smaller crew now than it was then.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, for sure.
we're getting pretty efficient, we're very busy, as you know, with all the CSO work, so there's a lot of new infrastructure going in the ground that hopefully we won't touch again in my lifetime at least. But, who knows?
Yeah, if everybody, and I don't know how you couldn't notice, but all the construction that's gone on for the last decade or so, it's a lot of money what's had to happen, but it's amazing what it's done for our infrastructure. Leaks that we have in the system don't exist anymore. So years ago, water mains were basically made of cast iron that was unlined, so you get rusty, dirty water a lot more. Flows would be restricted from the pipe tuberculating in over the years. Now it's all cement line, cast ductile iron pipe. So many improvements. House services that might have had lead in them have been replaced now with straight copper. Lots of great improvements with that. It's nice. We're finally, I think, definitely seeing the end of the tunnel, in that CSO work. But
So how often do you test the water and where do you test it?
We test it every day, many times, but Scott could run you through some of the operational stuff. There are things
Right.
that we have to do quarterly or annually, or lead and copper is once every 3 years. Unless we get high levels, then it'll switch to every year. But, I mean, daily we do turbidity, chlorine, alkalinity. Scott could probably fill you in a little bit.
Right.
everything, but-
Yep, so by regulation, we have to test the chlorine at least every 4 hours, the chlorine residual. There's a certain limit we're allowed to no lower than to leaving the plant. But that's tied right to an alarm. We set the alarm point higher than that level. We're online instrumentation, so it's constant. We know every 3.5 minutes it takes a sample. Turbidity, the dirt that sneaks through the filter, that is actually, it's same thing every 4 hours, but we have online monitoring for that, which is continuous. Individual filter monitoring is a relatively new rule. The in-term enhanced surface water treatment rule is every 15 minutes. Each filter has to be monitored, but those, again, each filter is individually monitored for that level. And same thing, it's all alarmed that if we have any violations or anything, it would shut the filter down and alert us to a problem. Every day we manually check those filters with benchtop testing. Filters, chlorine, pH, both in the river and our finished pH leaving here, the alkalinity of the water. We test that daily. As far as sampling out in the system, we're obligated by the state to do 10 bacteria samples a month out in the system. They're split out over 2 weeks in the month, so in case there's something going on within the month. Those sites are predetermined by the state and based on looking at a map of our system, so they're well represented. Them sites have been the same sites really close since I've been here. Other than expanding a little bit due to DHMC in the last 30 years going in, which is kind of interesting. Then we monitor for disinfection byproducts, TTHMs, HA5s. We have to do that quarterly. All this information too can also be found on the city website on our CCR, Consumer Confidence Report. You can see results on that, our ranges and whatnot. The next one of the biggest ones, we monitor the TOC, the total organic carbon in the river, the raw versus the finish. The more organics you remove from the water, the lower usually TTHM residuals you have in HA5s. So that's why we monitor the TOC. Lead and copper, like Jay said, is due to, we've always passed our lead and copper monitoring, so we have reduced monitoring every 3 years. The latest thing is the UCMR testing by the EPA. Due to instrumentation, they can, all the things they know about nowadays, they put together a list over the years, and over the last 3 years, we've been tested for over 100 different contaminants, possible contaminants. Luckily, we've only found a trace of one, and then in the next sample, it wasn't there. So that's good news. It's very important, and it's good that our source water is very rural and very remote, and that helps to have a good product coming in. It's important that we protect that.
So quick question.
Sure.
Or maybe not quick question. You mentioned that EPA is slowly, shall we say, updating the number of chemicals that are being tested for, but there are tens of thousands that I'm wondering, do you ever do any like broad spectrum testing to see, are there things in there that you're not required to test for, either a mass spectrometer or something to look at? What else might be in the water that you're not required to test for? And I know like PFAS is...
Yeah, we did. That was part of the UCMR 3 testing in 2016. We were non-detect for that, which was good. We also test for arsenic, nitrates, nitrites, IOCs, VOCs, SOCs. It's a huge list, and my budget's like $30,000 a year for chemical testing. So we try not to, if we're mandated to test for it, we test for it, but I got to trust the people in the EPA. They're looking at the most dangerous things we should be testing for. And
Do you ever partner with, like, there's a university right here in a medical center. I'm wondering to potentially do, either research and look at other things that maybe EPA is not.
And no, that's interesting. Yeah, I never thought of that. That's interesting. Yeah. Yeah.
Not that you want to look for problems, but I mean, there was the concern
Right.
of,
Yeah,
there are
yeah.
a lot of, and as you mentioned, rural water system and rural sources, so going to be less of those issues.
It's actually, this treatment technology is very good at trapping the carbon we use, and the anthracite coal is very good at trapping and eliminating and taking contaminants out of the water. But there's always a potential, and we're always on if we know of any spills, we're very in tune with the police department and the fire department. Being that the Mascoma River goes right by the interstate, they're aware that if a tanker or something spills there, that they need to let us know, and we can shut the plant down even remotely from home if we have to, till we find out what's going on. There's been a few way back in the 50s, there was an oil tanker that spilled, and it was quite a deal, but they kept the plant running, believe it or not. It was even with 2,500 gallons of oil spilled in the river. With that carbon, they were actually able to turn it up high enough to remove the oil out of the water. It wasn't considered drinkable, but it was usable for bathing and whatnot and stuff like that. I don't want to see that in my time again. That would really be something. Yeah.
Scott, how often do we have to make available our comprehensive water quality report?
Every year, that's another rule from the EPA, that consumer confidence report. We have to update that every year with the most latest results of what we have.
Something Scott did last year, if you notice on your bill when you get it, it says where it's available on the city website. So part of the rule for that is that we have to notify you guys as the customers where you can see that to look it up. So we said, well, if we put it on the bill, they'll always see that and it'll satisfy that requirement. Because we used to mail it out to everybody. We stopped doing that. The city's trying to go 95% paperless. I'm trying to keep 2% of that just for me. But so that's part of our effort to do that.
Right,
So
right.
that's why you don't get mail in anymore.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, it was very expensive when we added that up for mailing, because a lot of people that have water accounts here don't live in the state, so then it just can't be a general postage mailing. It was pretty, when it first came out, I don't know how long it's been now, 18, 19 years that we've had to do those. It was very cumbersome to take care of that, fulfill that requirement. Yeah. Yeah.
I have a question. I
Yeah.
live up on Young Street,
Yeah.
and we actually have a filter system
Yeah.
in our house.
Yeah.
And I have, it's the big filters.
Cans,
right?
yeah.
Yeah, 2 of them.
Yeah. Two
I
of
have
them.
to tell you, it's pretty disgusting.
Yeah. Whereabouts on Young Street?
Right at the end on 88. I'm at the very end of the road.
So over by Geyer?
No, on the end of Williams and Young Street,
Really?
near the intersect.
Huh. Interesting.
I would love for you to see it.
Yeah.
It's pretty disgusting.
I'm going to guess it's some iron and manganese that you're trapping, which we have some in our raw water. Part of that polyorthophosphate we want to add will precipitate out the iron and manganese before it gets out in the system. That's our hope and that's our plan. The little bit of preliminary work we've done show it will work, and that's other systems do that for that reason. when you do trap it and accumulate it over time, you don't tend to see it when you don't trap it,
No,
but,
yeah, most definitely.
right,
Yeah.
and when you, it's
You can't see it if you run
it's a
the track.
secondary contaminant. It's not considered harmful, especially at the levels we have,
Yeah.
but it is aesthetically unpleasing. And if it gets bad from a sudden jarring to the water system, if you're
Yeah.
doing whites in your laundry, I
right.
know it can cause
Right.
an issue.
Yeah.
I am aware of it.
Yeah, yeah.
Not you.
A little bit of construction up there, so. it
Oh,
might
yeah.
have been-
Right.
Yeah,
A little
our
bit
construction
worse,
was done
yeah.
5 years ago.
Right.
I'm at the other end is the one that's getting worked on
Right,
next,
right, yeah.
so.
And that's the older part that hasn't been touched yet, and I
Yeah.
was kind of hoping you were on that end, but,
No, and we had our pipe replaced from the house to the road.
Yep.
You know, while they were there.
Yep.
Just figured we might have it done, because
Yep.
good thing we did.
yeah,
That thing was like.
tender
ready-
and all.
Yeah, oh yeah,
Right,
ready to
right.
go.
Yeah, yeah.
But yeah, it just surprises me listening to you,
Mhm.
you know, that, because we replace about every 3 months, you know,
Wow.
and
So you have two filters?
two filters.
One for sediment, one carbon for
Well, it
tasting?
goes from one filter,
Mhm.
and it filters it again,
Yeah,
and
but
then
they're
it
the
goes-
same
Was it just
filter?
bigger and
Yep.
smaller?
No, they're
or
both the same
the
size,
Oh, wow.
yeah.
Huh.
The second one isn't quite as bad, it's probably about half as bad as the
Mhm.
first one.
Some people, most people, and nobody actually likes chlorine,
Yeah.
but it's a necessary evil that we have to add.
Yeah.
But I know some people filter it, you can get a filter to filter it out, so
Right.
they don't taste it.
Yeah.
In a way that, I was hoping that was kind of part of it too, that the other filter was for chlorine.
No,
Uh,
no,
Oh,
Yeah.
okay, well,
anytime you wanna visit, please feel free.
So the secondary standard that he's talking about, those are like aesthetic standards only. So they actually limit, like, they don't want us passing too much color because you turn your tap on and, oh boy, it looks bad. So it's not actually bad for you, but there's limits on how good it needs to look too. It
Yeah.
has nothing to do with human health
Aesthetics.
at all.
right, right,
It's, that's one of those standards. that-
right.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, that's the number one complaint from people, is my water's brown. And I can't blame people, I don't want brown water either. I get
That's why you
it.
send out those announcements when they're doing,
Flushing
Flushing
or
and stuff.
construction, and a big one is when, if we have a fire flow test or something in the area out of the blue, that jars things and
Yeah.
loosens things up, yeah, unfortunately. I was gonna do a little walkthrough, is there any other questions right now?
Last one, is there any risk from flooding? Have you guys ever flooded with the river going by?
So in 30 years here, now, Mascoma Dam 30 years ago was all manually operated at the dam. We don't take care of Mascoma Dam, that's the state. But now that's automated from Concord, and there's a number we can dial in, and we can actually see the levels at the lake and what's going on. They give us a heads up. Since they can control remotely and they can monitor constantly, they keep a better handle on potential runoff and whatnot. Not gonna say it's not ever gonna happen, but in my 30 years, I've only seen it cross the road out there one time, which our clear well hatches are about 18 inches higher than that.
So a big storm coming, they can always lower the level.
They
a
can
bit.
start, and they do that. If the runoff that we've all been dying for to get rid of the snow and finally move on to spring, we anticipate a big open coming up soon. The kayakers will be happy, I'm sure.
Every
Yeah.
spring, we have the kayak race, but
Right.
kind of interesting about the dam, so we take, was it 3 CFM?
We average about 3 CFS, cubic feet per second, which equates to about 1,100 gallons a minute of water. We process about 540 to 600 million gallons of water a year, about 1.4 million gallons a day. As water bills go up, we see demand go down. It's kind of interesting, and right now we're seeing a decrease from 15 years ago. Yeah,
And, well, and also new construction and
new construction,
replaced.
right,
fixtures
and
with
more efficient fixtures nowadays, exactly. Yep, yep.
Conservation's a lot more common than it used to be. I mean, everybody knows what water conservation is now. Even as a kid, I had no idea. Turned the sprinkler on, ran through it. That was that. So, it's a lot of just people knowing that it's good to save water. It's part of it too.
But it also then sounds like you have the capacity for, as, you know, there are new developments going on, that you don't have to necessarily increase the capacity of the plant, because you already have, thanks to lower demand over time, when new,
Right. As
developments come on.
this upgrade we're going to go through, we did a hydraulic analysis of the whole system. It's estimated we can produce around 3.6 million gallons a day. Based on demand at 1.5, we should be good for the foreseeable future. That was our thought, and the state kind of backed us up on that for long-term planning.
And our max day last year was 2.2.
2.2 million, I think it was on the 4th of July when it was so brutally hot, not like today. Right, yeah. Yeah.
So if you guys wanna head outside,
Yeah, we can just do I was gonna take you up to the dam and show you the intake structure and all, but I was up there this morning, it's still very icy, and I don't know about y'all, but I've had enough slipping and sliding this winter. We won't go up there. We can take a walk through the chemical building, take a look. Town underneath there, it's two big trains, if you will, of compartments where the water is getting mixed. After it gets mixed, it goes into a sedimentation process where it goes all the way across that lawn in two big underground basins that hold about 250,000 gallons of water each. Then it goes from a pipe into the filter building underground. It's really kind of neat. I'd like to drain it and drag you all through there, but can't do that tonight. So we'll just take a kind of a walk through, and you can just take a look at the chemical process. Where the hoppers, where chemicals get added. Down below here, there's several pumping systems that pump the water. We can actually control all the pumping and the operation from several different points in the plant with different computer access points. And that's what's going on right here. And then we can just walk through here. So underneath these hatches and these big motors you hear turning, there's these humongous flocculation arms in there that are turning the water and mixing the chemical in. Raises the pH of the water. The coagulant we add drives the pH down, and of course the more acidic it is, it makes the water more corrosive. So when it's all said and done, we bring the pH back up to make the water more basic. So this is the coagulant bulk storage tanks. As you can see, we use quite a bit of it. These tanks are almost 30 years old. They're going to be replaced with the upgrade that we're going to have. This is our maintenance shop. With all these pumps and motors, we have redundancy, but we have to make sure things stay running. We have to keep stuff stocked, so if we ever break down, we can be down a minimal amount of time and be back up and running. We'll just take a walk through here, and we'll kind of come in the other side of the building. Tanks are pretty new. This is sodium hypochlorite bleach, and it's a lot more corrosive, harder on stuff. So these tanks have been replaced twice in the time frame that those have been replaced. So these are pretty new. A new type of pumping technology is peristaltic pumps. They're a lot easier on piping and stuff. We're slowly switching everything over to peristaltic type pumping. We've recently done the chlorine and the fluoride feed addition. But this is our disinfection process here. This is what gives you what no one likes is the chlorine taste in the water and the smell. In the summer about 1.2. And then we have two booster stations where we have to boost it up during the summer to make sure we maintain a residual at the furthest points.
Is it coincidence or planned that the pool would be
I don't know. I got a feeling it was just luck, I guess. When I first came here, the pool was where the parking lot is, and I guess the office was still where it was, and then when they redid it, I'm trying to remember what year they redid that, 2005? It's been a while, hasn't it, Paula? Yeah. And they kind of flip-flopped it, I think, to keep it away from the treatment plant a little bit, which was a good thing. We'll go back in through this way. So this is, So this is the fluoride treatment system I was telling you about that's been running since 1956. We've changed the style of how it runs a little bit, but it's basically the same as it was way back then. But if your dentist is happy you get fluoride, this is where it happens. These two compartments you see with the lights on, like I said, so this process comes through here in two separate entities, if you will. And this is the first place where the operators can kind of eyeball the process to make sure things are going properly. And when you add a coagulant to the water, you're trying to form a process, and it's called flock formation. An ideal flock formation, it looks like it's snowing. And what it is, the chemicals binding onto any dirt particles in the water to make them heavier so they'll settle out in the sedimentation process so the filters don't have to work as hard at their job. So when it's snowing in there, we're happy. That's a good thing. So that's about, the water depth is about 12.5 feet deep. So overall it's like 14 feet deep. There's about 100,000 gallons of storage each side in this part. The next section is about 250,000 gallons in each section. And like I said, based on the speed of the plant, this right now, this takes about an hour to go through this process and about an hour and a half to go through the next process before it gets onto the filters. Good question. So the sediment in that basin, of course, it slowly settles out across the basin, and then we have these collectors out there, these underwater chains that we drag it back this way very, very, very slowly, and then it goes into a sump pit, and we manually pump it out. And if you've ever walked the trails over in Riverdale, you've noticed those two weird-looking little ponds. It gets pumped over there. And then we try to do it every other year. We can dry one up at a time, and we can scrape that out and let it start the process all over again. So that's basically all river silt that gets dredged out. And we truck it to the landfill. They mix it with sand, and they use it for top cover to seed the top of the landfill to try to recycle it. Kind of interesting. It's actually too rich to grow stuff on its own, so that's why they have to mix it with some sand. Interesting. Good question, though. If you notice the big piles over there, we have to get at that this summer to get it removed out of there. Yeah, unfortunately. Any other questions I could answer about anything? No? All right. We can go back over and take a peek at the computer. Back to is the computer here at the plant now. We rely on this. I don't know what we do without it, but the plant is actually set up that if there was a major problem and the computer went down, even though we have a backup, we can still run things manually. It would be a huge more amount of work, different than what we're used to for a long time, but we could do it that way. This is just it's kind of a screensaver screen, but it kind of shows what the process is doing right now, all the online instrumentation feeding back. But we can go out in the system. We can see what every tank in the system is doing. We can monitor a lot of the pressures. All the filter monitoring, the gallons per minute leaving. Out in the parking lot by where you park, there's actually 2 underground clear wells. So when the water's filtered, it actually goes through this, it's basically a maze, baffled clear wells before it's pumped out of here. And that's to allow contact time for the chlorine to do its job with anything that might have escaped the filtration process. From there, it's pumped up the hill up to the main storage tank, or if the other tanks are calling for it in town, it's sent to those tanks.
All piping, underground piping.
All underground piping. It is, and I don't know how a lot of grit way back before they had machines. We have a few old pictures where they did it literally by hand. It's incredible to dig those ditches and stuff. It's when you see the construction going on, some of the boulders they run into and stuff. It's pretty incredible.
How deep down are those pipes?
So we try to maintain at least 5 foot of cover, which we've actually found in the last about 3 years ago. That winter we had that was so cold, we had over 180 freeze-ups, I believe, that winter. House services that froze. So we're actually kind of rethinking that maybe 5 feet isn't quite enough to make sure we prevent that in the future. Yeah. Is there any other questions I could answer about your water or your water system?
What other towns take their water out of Mascoma
As far as I know, we're the only ones that take water out of the Mascoma River. There's a small power company that takes water out down off the Glen Road. They take some water out of the Mascoma River. Enfield, they actually have a well system out in Enfield, their public water system. And Canaan takes theirs out of Canaan Street Lake and a well system also. Hanover, they have 3 reservoirs up in Hanover they take theirs out of. Yeah, yeah. As far as I know, we're the only ones that take water. Yeah.
Do you guys have backup power?
We do. We have a 350 kW generator. Years ago, we had someone clip the pole here up on Route 4 that fed the plant, and we were down all day. This was a long time ago, and we realized that years ago when I first came here, we only had to run 8-9 hours a day, and we could shut down. We'd run really, really hard and shut down and let the system tanks come down at night and then fill back up the next day. We found the plant runs better and get a better water quality if we run slow and steady. But we also found if we do that, we have to have backup power. And years ago, there actually wasn't sewer down here. This place actually had a septic system. Well, when they decided the Public Works garage and the junior high school, they decided to put sewer down here. Then the sewer station had to have emergency power. And it was a good time to put a generator in. So we have an automatic transfer switch on the generator and a power loss. We don't miss a beat. Kind of nice.
If there was a catastrophe, I don't know that, but how much water would you have in those tanks to be able to take care of the city?
So chucker block full, we can store 7.2 million gallons of water, 1.4 million gallon a day demand, 5 days. That's the thought. I hope I don't see that. Right, yeah. Right. Yeah, but it's a good question. Yeah, we actually have to supply the state with an emergency response plan where we try to think of scenarios, what could happen, what ifs, and what we would do about it and whatnot. We're actually interconnected with Hartford, Vermont, and Hanover, New Hampshire, but it's more based on pressures, us supplying them, not them supplying us. We actually have fed Hartford before, so they could do some maintenance on their system over there. The new Bridge Street Bridge over in West Lebanon, that's where we connect to Hartford. In Hanover, we connect in 2 different points, up on Route 10 and up by DHMC. Yeah.
Is there anything you guys that you don't have that you wish you did?
More help. I actually have an operator position open right now. If you have a son, grandson, yourself are interested in a water operator job, it's a kind of a neat field. You never know what you're going to be doing. Might be doing this right now, an hour from now, might be running a chainsaw, I don't know. Doing lab work or going to someone's house to look at their water filter. So, yeah, seriously.
Because you can't fill it, is it difficult?
So right now, Enfield has an opening in their water department, Hartford has an opening in their water department, Hanover has an opening in their water department. For years, people kind of just, we didn't fill positions. Someone tends to get in a job like this, they tend to stay here. And now it's a very demanding field too, and you don't hear about someone going to a school and promoting the water field. They might want to be an engineer, but an operator, you don't hear. There's no really schools for it, so we've actually taken people in just to train them. When I came here, I had plumbing experience in the Air Force. That's how I got my foot in the door, and that was 30 years ago. So yeah.
So for the operator job that's open now,
Yeah.
2 questions. One,
Yeah.
what education would you need to get into it, like right in through the door? And 2, what are the benefits
Benefits
with the job?
for as far as health care and vacation and stuff like that. That would have to go through human resources, which she'd be glad to talk to you about. Education experience, we like to see a water treatment license at some level through the state of New Hampshire. Here again, they have 1 class a winter where they do a basic operator's course and you can train for it. But it's so much of it's on the job training. But there's a Sacramento books, right? Training course that you can do, Jerry?
The University of California, Sacramento has a bunch of classes.
Yeah.
And they're like the big thick textbooks, they're worth 90 credit hours, and if you accrue a certain amount of credit hours, it allows you to sit for a license. So those
Yep.
classes are like, I think it's $50 for the book, $50 for the class, there might even be some on the shelf over there.
Right. But,
That's, like when I first got my water license, that's what I studied through. I don't know if
So it's a
Scott did the same
license.
thing, but it's pretty
yeah,
cool.
it's licensed through the state, and you have to maintain, they have classes throughout the year on different subjects. Depending on what level you're at, they might have stuff more regulatory-wise, or safety training. There's a lot of, you can only have so much that's managerial, so some has to be safety, some has to be field-related. It's kind of interesting.
So you have continuing education?
Yes, yeah, I think it's at least 20 hours every,
Every 2 years, we have to have 20 credit hours.
right, which is,
So it's kind of weird, it's 40 credit hours, but you can use 20 from the 2 years before that.
right. It's interesting, but they keep everybody up to date on regulations, basically, is what's nice. So, to kind of answer your question more, I know require, I believe, a GED or high school diploma minimum, clean driving record, and we prefer to see some type of water training, but it can be, we've people that like a construction aptitude, that type of stuff. But really, to put in an application, if you know someone or yourself, look online at the job description. Yeah. Super. It's a good field to get into, because it's with all the, years ago there wasn't as much going on, and the regulations now, it's almost overwhelming, the stuff you got to keep up on top of, which is a good thing. It makes for a safer product, but it is very demanding.
Tough job to offshore also.
And that's the other thing is, like, so we hired a guy recently, and he is very good, but he'd never been to this type of plant before. So even though he's got all kinds of experience, this is like learning a whole new animal. So just because someone's got a fishing license, don't mean he knows how to catch this kind of fish. It's kind of interesting. Yeah.
You concerned about security?
Yeah, I don't like to tell people a lot what's going on, but every tank we have, every hatch, every access, every door has a security system tied to it. Ever since 911, the state did a lot of funding, fenced in some of our tanks, intake. Years ago when I came here, there was no fence around the plant. Half the time we forgot to lock the doors. Nowadays, we can't do that nowadays. Yeah, it's a different world, unfortunately. So we try to, and where we have the online monitoring for pH, chlorine residual, if somebody did something, odds are we'd know about it pretty quick. We're monitoring the pressures out in the field. I'd like to think we would be right on top of it. All our remote stations, we get to them weekly to check them. In the summer, a couple of them we actually get to daily to monitor chemical addition. Yeah.
All those alarms do go straight to dispatch, so it wouldn't be like Scott driving back from his house to go see you, see it out in your face in a couple minutes.
Right. That's what usually happens. They
Test them. Take
Yeah.
your word for it.
Yeah, they will. Yeah, they call us right up and they say, we don't see nothing here, but we'll wait for you, because our rule is we'll be the deciding factor whether it's something actually got broken into and tampered with. Yeah.
Not plow, cars will pack it down, and then it's a real difficult problem of plowing after that, because it's oftentimes 3 or 4 inches thick. So we try to stay on top of it as much as we can, and there are some areas around the community that are difficult. Seminary Hill is a difficult hill to keep plowed and treated with the volume of traffic that goes up and down the hill.
Is this seasonal, so they are only in winter here, or do they other work in summer?
No, this is a full-time crew, and in the summertime, I'll move on. In the summertime, we clean out catch basins. Stormwater catch basins have to be cleaned. We take care of the city mowing. We take care of city cemetery, all the mowing and treatment in there. We don't do too much on the rail trail. That's the recreation department. Kind of does most of that. Unless it's a big tree or something, they'll call us and we'll go down and help them out. But the rail trail is a little something we don't do. But of course we have the water plant that you saw, all the pipes that are underground, the water plant, wastewater plant, and you're going to visit the landfill next week. So there's quite a staff. But here, out of this office, we do the roads, the sidewalks, citywide mowing, cemeteries. That's pretty much what this group of gentlemen, staff takes care of here.
On all the state roads too?
No, what we do is, like US Route 4 here, that goes right through the community. We plow what's called inside the urban compact. So right over here by Bank Street, where it goes very sharp to the right, there's a little tiny sign right there. So the state plows to that sign, and from that sign, it's us. Same on School Street, on Route 120 South. You go down there a mile or two, and you can see a change in the pavement, and there's a little tiny placard. So the community gets paid every year by the state to maintain those state and federal routes in the community.
And then the state does the interstate.
State does the interstate and all the other, they plow all the way up the hill by Dartmouth College on Route 120 all the way over through to Jesse's and into that area. And then, of course, they go 120 south, and then they come up to about Home Depot, and then they go north of town. We pick it up. I'm trying to think of the name of the little furniture store just north of town. Allard's. There's a sign right in that area where they go from there into the Hanover area. Yeah. So we have inside the compact type thing.
So that includes parts of West Lebanon too then?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. So
Why is it? Do you have different equipment than the state, like they're doing, sort of the longer stretches, or basically it's Lebanon, it's the more compact areas?
well, communities can enter into an agreement with the state of New Hampshire DOT, and Lebanon has done that. I know Claremont does it. Little town of Newport does not do it. They have one road through, and the state just comes in and plows right around and carries on. But other communities have urban compact. And like I said, we're compensated each year from the state to maintain that section of road.
So it lets them focus on the
Yeah.
other sections. You have the team here to do.
Yes. Yeah. And we've got plenty to do in all the developments and all that stuff. Yes, ma'am.
So given how difficult the sidewalk plowing seems, why not just require residents to shovel their own sidewalks?
That would be a great idea, and some communities do that. Lebanon does not have an ordinance that does that. And I think, I'm not 100% sure, but I think the state of New Hampshire law requires that communities maintain their sidewalks.
I've
So,
never lived in a place that did that before.
Well,
I was so surprised on
yeah.
it.
Yeah. Take care of what's in front of your house.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that would be wonderful.
Right.
Yeah. Talk to your counselor.
Unless you need to walk on it.
Yeah.
So I've lived in communities like that where some people do not take
Yeah.
care very well.
You give time.
Yeah, you get, right.
So it's,
The fines, not very high.
long story short, it would be wonderful to have that, but
We take
we
care of
don't.
our own hydrants, but, yeah, we don't have a sidewalk in front of our house, but we take care of our hydrants.
Mowing around the hydrant?
And
Oh,
shoveling
that's
it out.
nice of you, thank you.
Yeah, we
Yeah,
do that too.
yeah, that's a very nice gesture. Yeah. Any other questions for right here? Let's take, go ahead, one more?
So
Sure.
16 hours? I mean, that just
16.
seems like a lot. So a
Well-
person's doing like 3 routes when they come on shift, or?
Well, the punch-in time always is 7 to 3:30. Unless we're called in an emergency, we may come in 11, 12 o'clock at night or 4 in the morning. We work along. We try to wrap things up in 16 hours, go home.
Everyone's working.
Everyone's working.
You don't have shifts.
Don't have shifts. No. We may have shifts going forward at some time in the future, but right now, just to get around your neighborhood one time every 4 to 5 hours before you see the truck, and that would mean the driver hasn't broke down, that, there's a lot happens.
Yeah, I mean, how do the drivers feel about that?
They'd like to work all the hours they can work.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, the overtime. Yeah,
The 16-hour limit is new this year,
yeah,
so just,
yeah. It's a new policy that we're slowly implementing of trying to, Well-
Like, let's say it's a 3-day storm. I mean,
That's the problem we're struggling with. That's the problem we're struggling with. Your drivers that are on the interstates and things like that, they're controlled by the federal government, and they do have time out of the seat and sleep restrictions, but municipalities, state are exempt from that rule and regulation, so we plow. Not saying it's the best, but we're instituting a policy, a safety policy. The manager is, pushing that, and we're trying to accommodate that. And like I said, I think this year, 2 or 3 times we might have gone 17, 18 hours. But what do you do when you get a nor'easter that lasts 3 or 4 days? That's what we're struggling with, is how do we accommodate all the phone calls we get? And we get them, even if the plow's not around every 4 or 5 hours. I haven't seen the plow truck all day, just not been here. Well, we know that he's been there because we have our tracking on all our trucks. So we know when the truck is moving and when it's stopped and who's been where. Yes, ma'am?
Oh, I was just gonna say, I mean, everybody's in favor of safety measures, but also if their street doesn't get plowed, they are Houston
Or their sidewalk.
They
Yeah,
just want
yeah,
theirs to be in the
yeah.
16 hours.
Yeah. So,
When you're coming, and when you're 5 miles away, our dog can hear that shaking.
oh,
and he
yeah.
barks at
That's
every
good.
plow, every sidewalk plow. It's like,
Yeah.
we're ready for spring, just to
Yeah.
hear that.
Wow. Good, good.
We love you guys.
Any other quick questions for about, it's winter, so we've kind of talked about winter, and pretty soon we'll be doing grading of roads and cleaning of ditches and cutting brush and things of that nature. Yes?
I have a question about staffing.
Staffing?
I always kind of wonder this with like seasonal, like is it the same group of people who are plowing who then in the spring are cutting grass, or is it like, you know what I mean? Like does it totally cycle out different staff?
It cycles a little bit differently, but it's the same staff. Same staff. So when it snows, all hands are on deck with respect to plow. Whether it's plowing the mall, plowing the sidewalks, keeping cemeteries open. Cemetery might not be at the top of the list, but it will get done during usually normal hours. And then everybody's on streets and sidewalks. So, but we do hire seasonal people in the winter. We take care of the steps at City Hall in and around there. Again, I said we did the plaza, the mall area over town is our responsibility as well. And then we'd have to pick up snow. So if it snows for 2 or 3 days, Tuesday, Wednesday, Friday night, we may come in at midnight and get the big snow blower right here, old yellow, and we'll be out doing snow. Yeah, if it's a lot of snow, it's a 2-night process. If it's not a lot of snow, but it's got to be picked up, if things hold together, we might get it in 1 night.
Where do you dump it?
We take it to a couple different locations. One out by the Valley Cemetery, behind the Jewish cemetery out there. There's a big area for snow dump. And then the other area we dump is down at the wastewater plant. Just as you enter the wastewater plant, there's a big open area there, and we put our snow there. We don't put our snow in the river or any of that stuff anymore. It goes to one of those two locations. Occasionally it's gone to the landfill, but that's typically not the case. Yeah. So that's quite an operation to pick up snow. I mean, we'll load a truck every 30 seconds or something like that, and it takes a lot of trucks, or we have to hire trucks to come in and work that 11 to 7, 8 o'clock in the morning shift. So, yeah, that's quite a. And fortunately, these guys are all pretty seasoned, so they know the process and who does what and which way we push the snow and how we pick it up. Yeah. So, okay. Take a quick look around the shop. Come back up this particular side. Back in here is a wash bay that we have. I'll let people catch up. Yeah.
And it's time too, so
Yeah.
Bruce, what is the plow rally? One person had that question.
I see you
'Cause we
came
got
in
an
second
award.
there.
Plow rally. The plow rally is plow drivers from the state and all the communities. They get together and there's an obstacle course of driving, avoiding mailboxes, backing up without hitting a bumper or something like that. And this last year, our guys came in second. After the plow rally becomes the New England Plow Rally, and then there's a national event, typically in Iowa.
Where is it in New Hampshire?
It was in the last 2 years, we've done it at the big parking lots at Mount Ascutney ski area. So they'll come in there. Okay? Yeah, so anyway, we got a big wash bay, overhead door. Behind you is the motor grader that we use for taking care of our roads, cleaning ditches out, pulling snow off from sidewalks so we can pick the snow up. Big loader that I talked about gets outfitted with a plow so he can take care of parking lots and things like that. Behind Jim is our one backhoe that we have in this division. This is 3 years old, I believe. And they're very expensive. There's no question about that. They're quite pricey. Over here we have, you can see the tanks on the back of the trucks. Each side of the truck has a tank. And I suspect in the next year or so, we'll be doing a little bit different type of treatment, because we can pre-wet the material so it doesn't bounce all over the place. And there's some other treatments that can go in there to apply to your road and try to get black pavement a little quicker. 6 or 8 tons into this big salt dog thing here. We take those out and they go on these hangers behind me. So in the summertime, those will all get picked out of there, serviced, and put up in the appropriate rack. And then we'll have the truck bodies for use as a regular truck all summer long. Okay. This one here is the marking on it is the truck number, but this is a 2016 here, and it's relatively well, this one's 2 years old, but it's relatively new. This particular one is an automatic transmission, if anybody's interested in that. We do have 1 or 2 standard transmissions, but we tried to go all automatic for operational ease, I guess is the appropriate term.
Efficiency these days.
Yeah. All our trucks are available to have chains. And I don't see any here real quick, but over here is a set of chains. So when the guys leave out of here, most always they're chained up. Yeah, they're chained up. If we continue along here, obviously a little asphalt roller. Here's one of the sidewalk plows that we talked about. This is the newest one we own. We just got this last year, and you've seen these going up and down the streets, but it's hard to imagine that this ends up being the same price as that.
Which is how much?
$175,000. Yeah. It comes with a plow, and it also comes with a snow blower. At times we need to put snow blowers on. Plowing's a lot faster. And in the back we can carry some product so we can treat the sidewalks. Has a little spreader mechanism, so as we're going down the sidewalk, you'll see dribs and drabs of salt and sand and things of that nature. This particular truck here is truck 2, obviously, but it's a 2002. So this guy's been on the road essentially 18 years. This truck's been going. So we're down to 1 or 2 real old trucks. Truck 12 over there is a 2000. So you can see that it takes a lot to maintain these, and I wish we could turn over every 12 to 15 years, but it's usually more like 18 or 20 years before we can do a replacement. But slowly getting there. The two oldest ones are 12 and 2. And pardon?
How many miles do they have?
I don't know that. I don't know that.
Probably a lot.
A lot. Yeah. Yeah. Here's one of the older tractors, same tractor. Now this one's got a power broom on it, so we sweep sidewalks. And we try to keep water out on the broom so it's not quite so dusty. Otherwise you got a dust plume all down the road. It works, and it's the intent that we try to keep the dust down just a little bit. But this is an old one. This one will be the next one to go. If we keep coming around, we can see a couple more here. This particular truck here has got an aluminum body on it, and all of the piping and stuff underneath the truck is all aluminum because we're concerned with salt and rust and all that, like on those trucks you just saw. We've switched in and we're getting a couple more of these. We're trying to use these in the neighborhoods. For example, where's Young Street? Young Street, up behind the Catholic Church, up in that area on the hillside. These particular smaller trucks seem to fit in there a little better. So we tried this one, and we have now ordered another one of these for hopefully being next January or maybe next fall if we're lucky. It takes 7-8 months for a build out. So you got to get in there, you got to go through the factory, then you got to get it to somebody that does the plow and all the assembly that goes with it. So it's quite a process. Here's a set of chains. We change our own chains here. If a link breaks, the guys come in, fix their own stuff. We have probably a $7,000 to $8,000 chain account each year to keep our chains so that you can drive them. So that's kind of interesting.
I just wondered, does everyone have their own plow?
Every driver or everybody in Public Works in this division either has a plow route or a sidewalk route. So there's nothing sitting. We've got 1 or 2 old trucks that we have kept for spare in case something happens. We've got one. But if we had 2 more drivers, we would put that out too. This place would be empty.
So you always come in and grab the same plow?
Same driver takes same plow, same truck. Yeah, they're kind of finicky about that.
I can imagine.
Yeah, and they have a tendency to know who's been in it if it isn't them. We got one truck chained up here so you can see it. So anyway, in the fall, the guys will chain these up, and what they do is if they're loose from the year before because they stretch, they'll take a link or 2 out themselves, get themselves ready. So every truck driver, not only does he have his own truck, he's got his own chains, and he don't like to have other people swapping out and taking his stuff. So they're pretty particular about it, and they're good about it. So. But this one here is a couple years old, this truck here. I wanted to show you over here our mechanics bay. One of the nice things about the mechanics bay, and this whole shop for a matter of fact, is the floor is heated, which for occupational purposes it really makes a difference on the staff to have not only a heated building, but the floor is circulated with a glycol, I think it is. We have an overhead crane. It's a traveling crane. We can pick up 20,000 pounds, which is essentially one of these big trucks we can pick up off the floor if we have to. It's very, very handy. All the exhaust system you see here, we can plug into a truck's exhaust. It's discharged outside. And then in addition to that, the shop has another safety feature. If carbon monoxide level or a certain amount of particulates in the air, an alarm will go off, and we have big exhaust fans. So everybody knows that the fans are running. We need to open the garage doors and get some fresh air in here. And that doesn't happen very often, but it's a safety feature that's built in here. Big mechanics tool chests. We supply the two mechanics with tools, and then the drivers have another toolbox that they can work out of, so to speak.
Mechanics don't drive a truck.
Well, unfortunately, they do, ma'am. So if a truck goes down, you lose that driver off his route, but you also lose the mechanic off his route. So you're down, if one goes, you're down two. Now, if it's something simple, they'll do it themselves, but usually it's not all that simple. It's a two-man fix to get that done. Just if you want to look at tires after they've been through with chains all winter, that's what happens with that operation by chaining up. And we go out, I think this year we went out 19 times since last October. We plowed and treated. I think that might be 2 or 3 storms more than the average. Usually it's around 16 storms a year you can count on from mid-October to 1st of April. But that's what happens to the tires.
How long does it take? A year or several years? Or
Yeah, most of these tires will be changed out next year. Yeah.
How much is a set of tires that big?
Well, those tires are probably worth $3 1/4 a piece, something like that, maybe $3.50. Big loader tire probably run you maybe a couple $1,000s. So depending on the size and number of ply and things of that sort. So it's very good. They can move trucks around. We can have 3 units in here without a whole lot of difficulty. One of the other things we do around the city is between ourselves, this group, and the group that's at the landfill, we do citywide trash pickup, which is in that truck right there. And so we take care of that as a public service as well. There's a couple of other features down the side here. I'd be glad to show you.
Just like water, like we have a vacant mechanics position open right now.
We do. We have a mechanics position open now.
Anybody knows anybody who is even looking in that direction, we have that position open also.
Yeah.
how many total positions?
The shop superintendent sits in here. Bruce Kimball, 34 years, lives on Mascoma Street. Bruce is going to be retiring. He sits here, a little computer screen behind him is how we track our trucks so that we can keep track of where they are, or if somebody has a concern, we can deal with that. Next room down is kind of a tool crib and a shop place where we keep parts and pieces so they don't disappear. But we have a tool crib here, and then in here we keep chainsaws, things that we would need in an emergency, so to speak. Wheelbarrows, jackhammer, shovels. So we have a little parts room and a little tool crib that we take care of. I'm sorry?
Somebody hit the crosswalk sign?
Oh yeah, that's between this and the whole signage is $300-400, and this is what happens. Somebody plow it down. Not our guys, but I mean traffic.
Yeah.
Run right over the top of them, not even paying attention. Yeah. This truck right here, right behind us here, this is brand spanky new, hasn't seen a snowflake. But this right here is around $175,000, all fully outfitted. Heated mirrors, safety lights, all the features that go with it.
Where do you store all the plows? Do you put the beds up there? Where
Put
do
the
the
bed-
plows go?
Well, some of them go outside, but each one of these plows has a little dolly. So that when he pulls up, he drops it onto a little dolly, does a quick disconnect, and then you can roll the dolly around, put it over against or underneath the bins and that sort of thing. Yep. So we don't have to horse the stuff around. They come right down onto their own little dolly bed specifically for that.
How often are the blades at the bottom of the plows replaced, or where at?
Yeah. The plow itself, we get a lot of longevity out of, but the center line, or the center that you see there, that cutting edge there, depending on the road, it may be placed once or twice a year. Now, if your road is concaved in it, that thing will wear in the middle and wear on the sides, and then there'll be where the groove of the road is. So if you go down a flat road, you can imagine what happens is part of the road. So it leaves 3 or 4 inches there. So anyway, they wear depending on that. And there's different kinds of those things. Some of them are so hard and can become so sharp they'll peel pavement up. So anyway, the cutting edge and the shoes that go with them are a replaceable item that we do every year. Yeah, we may spend in the $8,000 to $10,000 a year in purchasing cutting edges and shoes and things like that, so they ride on the snow. Okay? Yes, ma'am.
This is maybe a trick question, I don't know, but what do you think it costs the city every year for snow removal?
What do I think it costs every year for snow removal? Do you remember that number? We just generated it the other day. I don't remember off the top of my head, but we have that number.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, we have that number. The labor, the equipment,
Yeah.
you know, the salt is, say, $2,000 at $70 a ton. So there's $140,000, $150,000 in salt alone. And then if you buy 2,000 tons of sand at, say, $10, you can do the math there. So we'll have a snow budget for material, maybe in the $180,000 range. And then the truck, the fuel, all of that goes with it, of course, is on top of that. But we do track that by storm or by date of the storm. So we have a rough idea. I just can't remember it off the top of my head. But we've got a fresh one from starting last October. Yeah.
I'd be curious to know that.
Yeah. Several $100,000. Yeah.
Plus overtime.
Plus the overtime that goes in it and all. You can hear the police dispatch. We key on.
How do you decide who gets the new truck? Is it seniority, or
Well,
you draw scores, or?
Who has the old truck?
you'd like to think whoever had the oldest truck, but and if he's a senior guy and he's got a fairly new truck, he doesn't want another one anyway, because he's got the one he's fixed and he gets it the way he wants it. But this particular driver's been here a long, long time, and it was his turn, and so a senior guy got a new truck. Yeah, yeah. But
Sorry.
Go ahead.
Do you ever share equipment with other departments? Obviously not the specialized equipment or the trucks that are the drivers, but like the loaders, backhoe.
So if Parks and Rec's called up and said we need a dozer at Storrs Hill for an afternoon, we would supply that. Usually there's no charge from one department to the other. We may ask Parks and Rec to pay for the move, because sometimes special equipment requires a special truck. But we do that. These trucks will go in and assist at the water and sewer plant to plow them out. If they get in a jam, they have some of their own equipment, but sometimes they need to have a little help. Same up at the airport this year. We went up and helped them load out and clear a parking lot. They were a little short-handed, so the staff from the landfill took a big loader up and spent a couple hours and it was done. So yes, we do share, and the various foremen and superintendents pretty much work that out amongst themselves, but it does happen.
Ever do it between towns as well, or typically just within Lebanon?
No, just within Lebanon. If there's a big emergency, there is a relationship between towns where you can get a truck. Yeah, for example, if, yeah, or if the little town of Lyme had a disaster hit and they needed a 10-wheeler, we have the ability to go there and do that. It's a mutual aid thing. There's a group around the state. It's like firemen have mutual aid. Well, and I've been here, in the 4 years I've been here, we haven't done that, but that doesn't mean it doesn't happen, because it does. There's no question about that.
Yeah, and just so you know too, it's a little bit of a different topic, but the same, is that we're doing more of a regional approach in how we're looking at public safety. So, you know, not every town is gonna need like a watercraft rescue, another town is gonna need, so the specialized equipment, we kind of like are coordinating a little bit more on a regional scale, so everybody's kind of well covered, and we do mutual aid.
Okay.
Can you repeat me how many towns?
Up in the hopper?
Yeah.
6 to 8.
6 to 8 towns.
Yeah. So we try to make an application as we're going down the road, just a rule of thumb, about 200, maybe 250 pounds of material per mile, per lane mile. So you got to go both directions. Yeah. So, you know, it's about 100 miles from here to Boston, and Lebanon has about 100 miles of road. So if you had a storm, you can envision plowing all the way to Boston, coming back, plowing all the way down and coming back. That puts it in perspective a little different. But
What's the total lane miles, or is that much more than double? Is that 100 miles or 100 lane miles? Or?
It's 100 center mile. So over 200 lane miles, because some parts of town have 4 lanes, right. Or 3 lanes.
Yeah, it's at 120, but that's a state road, so.
12A though, over by the shopping centers over there, that's a deal. All right, excuse me. We have locker facilities, we have showers, we have a laundry system. Predominantly used by the mechanics, but we do have the ability to wash some clothes if we need to. And I'm trying to think what else we might have of interest here. Upstairs is really storage, and our heating and ventilating, air conditioning, all the big fans are all controlled from upstairs. We have right in front of us here at the head of the stairs a little sign shop, sign inventory that we keep signs on hand. The big black thing here in the corner, this is another fountain, which I think is going to go into the Glenwood Cemetery eventually. So there's been a family that's donated some money to get that thing on track to try to reintroduce the fountain in the Glenwood Cemetery.
So you guys do the fountain cover?
We do the fountains around the parks, yeah. Yeah, we do all the leaf pickup downtown. We'll do all the spring raking. We hire out our street sweeping. So there'll be a time here in April and May when we'll start picking up all the winter sand, so to speak, that's gone out. And
Christmas lights up too?
I'm sorry?
The Christmas lights up in
Well, between us and the fire department, the city electrician who has a bucket truck often helps out the parks people for a couple of days. Yes, sir.
So I see that you have a couple of street name signs up there. How
We do.
many copies of an individual street name do you need to have on hand, or do you have to special order for every time?
A special order.
Special order?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Years ago, they'd make their own signs here, but a lot of the new signs as you drive around all have retroreflective ability, whereas some of the old signs don't. So you may be on a back road and see a stop sign that's really faded, needs to be changed, call it in, we'll try to change it, try to get it changed. But we go to all this high intensity street signs so that when you're driving down the road at night, it's very clear of what, if it's a stop sign or a warning sign or a yield sign or caution sign. They're all different shapes, they're all different colors, and they're that way for a purpose.
Oh, I meant like the, you know, if you live on Gould Road and you have a
Yeah.
copy of a...
Same thing, I special order those. Yeah, yeah, same thing. And when we're doing the CSO projects, all the new streets with the water and sewer and all that, all those, as part of that program, all of those street signs are new, once and for all. We did everything. Sidewalks, water, sewer, storm, all done, including the signage. So, that's about it for down here. When we drive out, anybody has a car needs to go by the, follow me, goes by the upper exit, because we're not allowed to use an out exit here where you came in. And we'll go by the big shed right here. There's not much to see in there other than some salt, but that's where it's stored, and I gave you the quantities essentially of what that's all about. And I don't know about anybody else, but it's warm in here. And it has to do with heated floor.
And insulation.
Yeah, yeah, we got some insulation. Yeah, it's a good facility, very nice. The guys are very happy to have it. Of course, when you saw what they used to have on Spencer Street.
How come it's so high? Does it need to be so high?
It does for this kind of span, from here to here, okay? And we wanted to be column free down the middle so we can do what we do. But yeah, that's why it's so high. And you can see there's some circulation going on up there now, and one thing and another.
With all the stuff we still have on our cars, the place is amazingly clean.
Yeah.
Right now, our cars are terrible.
Well, we did a little housekeeping here today, but like I said, we have a wash bay and stuff. I mean, the trucks look pretty good, and after a big storm, they're parked and they're not in this condition, but as soon as we get a break, things are cleaned out and hosed off, and again, you can see they're all stainless steel now, and that there's a purpose for that. Okay, well listen, if I can answer any other questions, feel free to get a hold of us at any time.